So we had our in-person meeting last Saturday, and it was amazing. We had a huge turnout, at least for our club, and yeah. So there's a quick picture of us in that room, and yeah, we had food, but we sadly ran out because we didn't order enough. But don't worry, because in our hackathon we will have enough food, and it's actually our first ever hackathon ever at ACC, and I think at a community college. So this is a big event for us, and here's a flyer. You can tell that I made the right hand side, and our design manager made the left hand side. But yeah, this is our ACC's first ever hackathon. It'll take place at Highland campus, and you'll have 24 hours to join a team and build a product. So yeah, we're super excited for this event, and there's some ways that you can get involved. First, you can join our Discord server of the hackathon after you sign up through our website. You can invite other people, and the person who invites the most people to the hackathon will actually win a special prize as well. And then lastly, we're looking for sponsors. So if you know of any companies that you would like to see there, or you have any connections, feel free to send them our way because yeah, we're really looking for sponsors. But yeah, I'll drop the link in the chat in a bit. But yeah, we also have another big thing. Since the semester is coming to a close, we have our officer interest form, and I put that in the Discord. I'll also put that in the chat. But we have a bunch of officer positions open. This is our officer team for the spring 2022 semester, and it's a pretty small team for the size of our club. We started, I think, this semester with around like 100 or so, 150 members, and now we're almost to 300. So we doubled so quickly, and yeah, now we need a bigger team. So I sadly will be moving on from the club this semester, but there'll be plenty of our officers who are staying, and plenty of opportunities for you to grow, and just if you've been enjoying this club, it's a great way to take a next step and just get involved even more. But yeah, the last announcement is actually from Kareem, um, and he's one of our officers, and he just wanted to share something. So yeah, go ahead.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Nate. So, hello, everyone. My name is Kareem. I am the developmental manager of the Computer Science Club. In addition to being one of the PTK officer, which is the honor society of ACC, I simply wanted to mention that I am running for a senator within the distance learning block of ACC, which is part of student government. Essentially, there was the preliminary elections, and I tied with the individual in question. So I simply wanted to advertise here today. I earned the reputation of being able to get positive results when appealing policies, especially when it comes to things related to student life that have been completely banned from them. Discord is one of them. I'm very happy about that because it's going to be critical for communication within the hackathon. And also, I have to mention that I benefited a lot from the inspiration of the officer body and everyone around me. So the runoff between me and that individual are going to is going to start next week on the 2nd of May. The reason as to why I'm running is because I realized that online courses are incredibly important and convenient for a lot of us. There are a lot of people that did not have the possibility of being able to attend ACC before the pandemic, and online courses gave them the accessibility of being able to go to school. It's something that I'm very passionate about, and I will make everything in my power to be able to keep that. In addition, the accessibility of the education there is within ACC, almost no difference between being out of district for in person classes and being out of district for online classes. So essentially, someone pays up to double or triple. I think it's triple, Nate, right?
I think so. I think
Triple of
so.
the regular rate,
Yeah, it's high. It's a lot.
right? Triple of the regular rate, which is, in my personal opinion, completely absurd and backwards. So these are my motivations. I'm going to post an announcement on the Computer Science Club Discord server, and I would appreciate your support. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Kareem. Yeah, and yeah, let's definitely all support Kareem because he's an amazing officer. But yeah, with that being said, I wanted to introduce our guest speaker, who is an amazing professor at UT Austin, MJ. So take it away.
All right. I do actually have slides. Is it okay if I present them? I don't know.
Yeah, of course. One sec, let me stop presenting.
Does this, if I, where do I click on? Okay. I want to move this window over there. No. Am I sharing my slides?
Yeah, we can see your slides.
Okay. Google Meet is so confusing. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you all today. My name is MJ, and I am a professor at the University of Texas. I am delighted to come here today to talk to you about game development. I asked Nathan when you first invited me to come here what was the topic y'all were interested in, and it sounded like game development had the most interest. So that's what I'm going to be talking to you all about today. Game development in general, and then also what can you do if you want to become a game developer. So first, I'll tell you a little bit about me. I have come from a variety of different backgrounds, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do for a lot of my life and a lot of my career. So I've kind of dabbled in a lot of different things. I originally went to school for programming. I started my own company at one point. I became an entrepreneur. Throughout, I have kind of gone back and forth into working at game development studios. And currently, I do research and teaching as a professor at the University of Texas. So back before I even went to school, the first thing I thought I wanted to do was actually web development. So that was my first introduction to coding, was doing web development. My mom actually taught me to do web development when I was in high school. So that was initially what I thought I wanted to do. But then I went to college, and then I was exposed to all these other kinds of things that I could possibly do. I actually changed majors about 6 times while I was in school because I still really didn't know what I wanted to do. Eventually, I did end up on computer science, but it took me a while to get there. At one point, I was a biology major, so I just was really all over the place. After I graduated from college, my first job was as a multimedia developer. And I actually relied a lot on the web skills that I learned in high school. So at first, I didn't even really feel like I was using my computer science degree. I was sort of doing these interactive web-based media things for training tools. So I did that for a while. And then I actually decided to go back to school. I went to Carnegie Mellon, and that was where I started learning game design. So Carnegie Mellon has a master's degree in entertainment technology, which is a variety of things, but game design is kind of a component of all of it, which is like immersive entertainment and media. And we do a lot of weird experience design. So one of the games that I worked on was, you can see us down in the corner. This is a 2-player Kinect game. And we're actually standing on Wii Fit balance boards. So we were using input from the balance boards and from the Kinect and creating this weird sort of combined experience where you are traveling through these underground subways and fighting giant robot spiders for some reason. And then, we did a bunch of weird stuff. This one up here was, we made a simulation of like you get shrunk down and you travel through a bloodstream and you're like fighting off an infection. And then this one up here, actually, I think I have on the next slide. So this one was a holographic game. You can see that we had special glasses that had trackers on them that let you, it creates like a holographic experience coming out of the display. We made this little game where you're trying to save these bunnies by moving them into safe zones. But you don't control the bunnies. You just, you lead them with carrots, or you trap them in bubbles and you float them around. So that was some of the sort of weird, interesting things. I'm gonna probably not respond to things in the chat, but if anything, Nathan, if you want to like say out loud to me any questions that you want me to answer, I'm happy to stop and answer questions, but it's hard for me to do both.
Oh yeah, my bad. Well, is it okay if we have a time at the end to ask questions?
Oh yeah, for sure. We can do questions
Awesome.
at the end. That'll work. But if anything comes up while I'm talking, I'm happy to stop. I just might not notice. So if you want to get my attention, if you want me to stop.
It might be relevant because Hani wound up raising his hand while you were in the middle of explaining. He might have something to say.
No, I accidentally clicked on it.
Okay.
Never mind.
Thank you, though. Appreciate it.
All right, then I will carry on. Okay, after Carnegie Mellon, then I got my first job in virtual reality. I worked for the Virtuix Omni. This is old VR. This is the Oculus DK1 back in 2014. So this is a 360-degree treadmill. It was originally being developed in Houston. They have since moved to Austin, but it was in Houston when I worked there. And so basically, it's a treadmill that you run while wearing a VR headset, and it lets you move around in VR. And it kind of was a little bit ahead of its time because when the original VR headsets, they locked you in place, so you didn't have like positional tracking. It was limited to just rotation. And so the Omni was meant to let people move around. But now people can move around because we have room scale VR, so it actually tracks the position of your head. So the Omni is not really a necessary piece of that anymore, but it was a really cool experience while I worked there. After that, I did work briefly in AAA game development, and I'm also happy to answer questions about the differences between like working in AAA game development versus working on sort of more experimental or smaller companies or working solo. But I did work on Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered, which was I also worked on Mafia 3, but I really did not enjoy working on Mafia 3. But so Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered was the one AAA game that I worked on and had a really good experience with. And then I also founded my own studio called Aspire Games. We make mostly little mobile games. I do this mainly during the summer when I'm not teaching, and so every summer I try to release at least one mobile game. These are just a couple of our more popular titles. Slapdash Bones was actually the first one I released. It uses the gyroscope in your phone, so you shake your phone to roll the dice. And then Cat Cave is just an endless runner where you play a cute little cat. And then Cosmos Arena is actually a PC game. It's a 4-player local multiplayer game where you 4 people with controllers all on one screen. So that's a little bit about the kind of stuff that I have done in the past. Right now, I do teach at the University of Texas. I teach quite a few things. I only have a picture of my VR class because it's the only one that I really photograph. So this is my VR class. But I also teach mobile development. I teach introduction to programming using Python. Previously, I've taught level design, I've taught game prototyping, game scripting, just kind of a variety of things related to or adjacent to game development. And then I do also contribute to a few different research projects. This is a research project that was about looking at the future of the state of Texas and how our water supply is going to change and how the population in the state of Texas is going to change over time. And so my part in this process was to create a VR experience. I was actually overseeing some undergraduate students. They did most of the actually making the stuff. So they made all the art and the code, but I oversaw these undergraduate students to create this VR experience to let people sort of become immersed with the data. The idea here was that like people don't like looking at numbers for data, but if we like drop them into a VR experience and show them the data, then maybe it'll be more impactful. The goal was to actually hopefully like raise awareness, and also like we were trying to get it in front of policymakers who might actually change their opinions about policies that they're trying to enact. So that was a cool project. All right, so that's enough about me. Let's talk about how our games made. I talked just when I was introducing myself, I talked about a lot of different kinds of games. I talked about mobile games and VR and AAA games. What do all these have in common? Well, they are all made of 3 pieces, which is art, sound, and code. You might notice that I don't list design on here. Design is actually kind of the thread that ties them all together. And there are other game development jobs that I would not list here as well, like producer, quality assurance, things like that, where you're part of the game development process. But what I want to talk about is what are the pieces that make the game? And that would be art, sound, and code. If you don't have these three pieces, you don't have a game. Well, actually, I should not say that, because I have recently played an audio-only game, and it was actually really amazing. So I'm going to have to put question marks next to art. And I actually have played a few games that didn't have sound, although I think they would have been better with sound personally. How do you make a game? Well, If you are just starting out on your own, most likely you'll use a publicly available game engine. There are a lot of free ones available. I am a big proponent of Unity. It's one of the first ones that I learned, and I've used it for about 12 years. It's a really both powerful tool and also a really easy learning curve. You can, I teach it to children. I teach it at the high school level over the summer. So it is super approachable and it does not need to be intimidating. A lot of the bigger game engines tend to be intimidating when you try to learn them. And so that's part of why I recommend Unity, is because it is both really powerful as a tool and also really approachable. And Unity does not pay me to say that. I actually just really love the game engine. So you can do a lot with making something on your own. This was a little prototype that I made during a game jam a couple years ago. This was actually for the Climate Jam, which was a game jam about raising awareness about climate change issues. And my focus for this was recycling and composting. And I was inspired by, I lived in a second floor apartment back then, and I would look down over my balcony and see the recycle bins overflowing with trash every week, and I was like really upsetting. So I made this game to channel my frustration and about the importance of sorting things before you dump them in the bins. But I made all this in Unity. I made it in 48 hours, and so you can do a lot with just like creating stuff yourself from scratch. So this is you can't hear the sound. There's sort of like a crunch sound when you run the crusher, and there's like a clink sound when you throw stuff in the bins. Yeah, actually, there's no animation. This is actually the physics system in Unity. It is just, well, the crusher is animated, but everything else is using the physics engine. So literally in Unity, you just check a box that says use physics, and it does the rest for you, including like when they sort of bounce off of each other down here. You might think that takes a lot of work, but that's actually just built into the game engine. The particle effects are, they're actually, there's a default particle effect, but then you customize it. So I started with the default particle effect, and then I made changes. But you don't have to do any coding to make the particle effect work. It's got a little visual editor, so you can change sort of like how far they fly and how quickly they fall down, what color do they start out as, and things like that. Yeah, so this is the kind of thing that you can make if you're just doing something on your own with Unity. So what about bigger games? What about AAA? AAA is still made of the same stuff. If you play Grand Theft Auto, it still has art, sound, and code. It just has a lot more of it. And so I worked on Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered. My role within that, I was not doing everything like on the previous example. I was very specifically doing coding. We used CodScript for Modern Warfare. But not only was I just doing scripting, I was actually just doing a very tiny part of the scripting on that project. I was one of 4 bug fixers. And so I wasn't even adding any new functionality or implementing anything. I was actually just going through and fixing bugs that were reported by the QA team. And it was a 40-hour-a-week job, and I was one of 4 people doing it. So the bigger the project, the less variety of stuff you do. You get very specific, and you have a very small focus, and that is the thing that you do for your full time. So I like to sort of like break things up periodically and just sort of make things interactive. So I had a word cloud on here that I was also going to ask your favorite game, but since that was the starting question, I switched it like right when I saw that. So now it is your favorite game. So let me pull it over here. I wanted to know, what is your least favorite game? Oh no, I've lost it. You know what? We'll skip this one. I have all the other ones still open, but I think I accidentally deleted that one when I struggled to share my screen. So type your least favorite game in the chat. I can't do a word cloud anymore. But I was going to ask you what your favorite game is. It's also really helpful to think about what is your least favorite game, because if you want to make games, it's great to have things that inspire you so that you have things that like you can think about how you can integrate that into your projects. But it's also great to know what things you don't like and why you don't like them and how you can try to avoid those things. So feel free to type your least favorite game into the chat, even if it's League of Legends. But yeah, so I've broken the word cloud, so we're gonna skip the word cloud. Okay, so feel free to type those in the chat if you want to, but no pressure, you don't have to. So if you work at a large game studio, like I mentioned, you would become very specialized in a very specific thing. And there's a lot of different things that you might find yourself doing. So some very specific roles that you might find. Oh, I see. Yes. So the thing is, I can't view the result anymore, Jason. That's why I skipped that one, because I have deleted the viewable version. Anyway, sorry about that. Okay, so variety of things you might do in a game development career: level design, sound design, composer. You get really specific. So environment artist, animator, character artist, all of these things fall within the umbrella of game development. And like I said, some of these are not directly related to art, sound, and code. So you'll see things on here like QA tester and producer. These are not necessarily contributing to the three components that I talked about, but they contribute to the overall process. And similarly, I did not mention design because design is more of how all of them are going to work together. So if you wanted to specialize in something to work at a big company, you might work in the art department, on the animation team, or the environment art team, or the character art team, or the VFX team. You might work in the design department, level design, sound design, system design, or you might work in the programming department as a tool on the tools team, UI team, networking team, or gameplay team. So these teams can be very large. Each of these teams could be 10 or 20 or 50 people, and this is all within one company. So it might be 100 or 200 people. The company I worked at when I worked on Call of Duty was a combined effort of 3 different studios. And the studio I was at had 100 people, and we were working with another team that was, I think, about 100 people, and then there was also a smaller team that was maybe 50. So there was a ton of us working on it, and we were in different time zones, and so it was really hard to communicate. But yeah, so these teams get very large. But if you want to become a game developer, and some of you, I have heard some of you might want to become a game developer, it is very hard to have that experience as your very first experience with game development. Most likely, you'll actually start as a solo game developer on your first couple of projects, just because it is really hard to emulate the experience of being on a 100-person team, unless you can find 99 other people who also want to experiment with this process and create your own 100-person team to make your first game. I don't recommend it. I think that would be a really challenging and possibly unpleasant experience. So what if you want to start out being a solo game developer? One of the things that you will need to present yourself with first is thinking about how do you design a game? What does it mean to design a game? Because those 3 pieces I mentioned, art, sound, and code, even though you don't have a game without them, having them does not necessarily mean that you have a game. So game design is what makes those 3 things work together to become a game. So what is game design? It is the process of coming up with a game idea, including what is the player's goal, what are the rules and the mechanics, the narrative and the setting, what challenges will the player face, and then prototyping those things. So a prototype is an early version of your idea that you can use to convey your idea to other people. And so at the very beginning of the very early stages, this might be concept art or sketches. You might do a white box, which is in game development, a white box is a process of blocking out a 3D space using white cubes that lets you sort of get a sense of what the space will be like. It's also sometimes called gray boxing or orange boxing. Obviously, you use gray cubes or orange cubes if you do one of those. And then the next stage of a prototype is to create a playable level. So you start to introduce some art, maybe some sound, and then a playable character controller so you can actually explore your playable level. Another thing that happens during prototyping is you might to start balancing some of the mechanics and challenges that you are introducing, because balance is a big part of game design and making sure that things are going to work well with each other. So what is the what is a goal? A goal is the end point that the player is trying to reach. And this is actually usually the first thing that you come up with when you want to make a game. So when you want to make a game, the first thing you think about is what will the player be doing at the end? What is going to be, they have now finished, they beat the game or they beat the level, they won. What does that mean? And so you start with a goal and you actually work backwards. So you start by thinking, what is the end point? That will mean the player, they defeated all 100 waves of enemies, or they made it to the top of the mountain or the top of the tower, or they defeated the boss at the end of the dungeon. So you think about what is that goal, and then you build backwards to where you think the player starts. The mechanics of a game are the player's actions constrained by rules. So if you think about chess, the rules of chess define each player takes a turn. On your turn, you can only move one piece. There are specific rules to how the pieces move. And the mechanics is actually moving the piece. So moving the knight in that L shape is a mechanic of chess. So you can think about mechanics of the games that you play. This one I do have working, so we can do this word cloud. So if you go to menti.com and if I pull this one over here, what will happen? Let's see. Let's see. Am I sharing that one? Let me make it full screen. No, let me make it full screen. Okay, so if you go to menti.com and you type in this code, you can do it from your phone too. You don't have to do it from a web browser. So if you type in this code, you can enter what are some game mechanics that you can think of for games. And I'll just elaborate while you're doing that. I'll elaborate a bit more on what are the game mechanics. So it's the action verbs. And so I mentioned with chess, it's moving your knight in that L shape. So it's the actions that are constrained by the rules of the game. So things like jumping, running, flying, shooting, things like that. So go ahead and tell me what are some mechanics you can think of from some games that you play? This is actually how I get a water break.
Leveling up.
Sure, leveling up, yeah. Yeah, like when you level up your character. Yeah. Oh, dash, upgrade, shoot. Yes, excellent. Dash is one of my favorites. So it's a great mechanic. So upgrade is an interesting one because it could be a lot of different things. You could upgrade a specific item. You could upgrade your skills. You could upgrade your character itself. Parry, block, air dash, fall. Yeah, these are all great. Drop. Free running, yeah. Jobs. Okay, so jobs is an interesting one. Again, I think it could mean a lot of different things, but the first thing that comes to my mind for jobs is like a management game where you have a bunch of characters and you assign the characters specific jobs to do. Craft the World, you have like 5 little dwarves that you're controlling and you assign them different jobs or tasks to do. I'm not sure if that was what the person who posted jobs meant, but yeah, there's a lot of different ways that could go. Interact, yeah. Parkour. Awesome. Cast, yeah. Cast. Equip, unequip. All of these are great. I love when I see some of the more weird ones I've seen when I do this. I do this one a lot. Some of the more weird ones I've seen is like die as a mechanic, which is actually a thing. Like you can die as a mechanic. In Braid, when you die, you actually see your previous path, and it influences your next path through. And so generally a mechanic has to have some like impact on what you're doing. So like dying by accident or like having to restart a level, I wouldn't necessarily call a mechanic, but when it is something that impacts your next playthrough, definitely I think that would fall in there. Eat is another fun one that I see sometimes. Oh, swim. I haven't seen swim on here yet. All right, cool. Well, thank you all for playing along. I appreciate it. I keep a collection of all of the ones that I've ever seen, and then I can use them to make my future games. Okay, so next, once you have, did I skip one? Nope. So once you have a goal and you have some mechanics, the next thing to think about for a game is obstacles and challenges. If the player knows what their goal is and they know how to get to their goal and they know the rules of the game, they know what their actions are. What stops them from getting to their goal? How do you keep them from just walking straight to the end of the level, walking straight to the top of the dungeon, or just like stabbing the boss and then walking past the enemy boss? So the way that you stop the player from just immediately finishing the level is by adding obstacles and challenge. And this is where you get to the fun challenge of the game, where what is it that the player is going up against that that they are going to feel satisfied when they overcome it. So there's a lot of different things that fall into this category of obstacles and challenges. You might think of spike traps, obviously, because that's what I have on my slide. But also enemies are a form of obstacle or challenge. Also, even just like stationary barriers like walls would be obstacles if you have to navigate around them. Things that make some mechanics more difficult. So if you think about if you have a run mechanic and then you have a stream of water, and when you run into the water, it causes you to slow down. So that is another kind of obstacle. And then there's also like puzzles or things that the player has to stop and think about, and that they can't just immediately move forward until they actually stop and think and try to solve a problem. So as you are thinking about introducing challenges, one of the things that we talk about in game design is an idea of flow, which is that as you introduce challenges to the player, you don't want to introduce all of the challenges at once. If you make the challenges too difficult too quickly, you cause anxiety. On the other hand, if you don't give the player enough challenge and they don't feel like they have to do anything, then they fall into this area of boredom. And so the ideal area here is called a flow channel. And the idea here is that you introduce a challenge, and then after that challenge, you offer a moment of rest where they get a chance to either practice the new thing that they learned, or they have a moment to reflect, or a calm moment to just sort of wander around and enjoy the beauty of the game world. And then you introduce the new challenge. And so you have this sort of oscillation where you introduce a challenge and then you offer a moment of rest. Okay, so you have your goal, you have some mechanics, things the player can do, you have some obstacles. Now, how do you make your game? So once you're ready to start building your game, there are a few different kinds of design that go into the process of making it. And the first, well, these are not in any specific order. These are just the order that I dropped them onto the slides. So one of the areas is visual design, which is what is the game world going to look like? This is not creating the art assets. This is not game art, but visual design is what is the aesthetic of the game? Is it going to be 2D or 3D? Is it going to be sort of this flat, solid color, stylized look, or are you going to have really detailed, realistic textures? Is it going to have like a dark visual theme where it's sort of like spooky, or is it going to be bright and cheerful? And so think about what are the visual aspects of the game and how it is going to support the other aspects of the game's design. So how does the visual aspect support the mechanics that you want to use? Having a game that has very violent and aggressive mechanics, but a very sort of like colorful and friendly world might cause some distortion for the players so that they don't really feel immersed in the experience. So thinking about how you can visually design your game world to support your mechanics. There's also narrative design, which is how you are going to tell a story with the world. And this does not necessarily involve text. A lot of people think of like dialogue or a written story or like a narration over the game. But a lot of games have narrative design that's sort of just intertwined with the world in terms of like the props, how the different characters interact with each other in the world, the setting of the world. And so thinking about what is the story that your world is going to tell the player, because even if you don't have a story in mind, the player is probably going to interpret a story of some kind. So it's best if you think of it in advance, and so then you can weave that story into your world. And then there's technical design, which overlaps a bit with programming or scripting. So this would be if you are working on your own. Technical design is when you start designing the mechanics and obstacles and then implementing them yourself. I did also want to mention, in contrast, technical design, if you work for a large studio, actually usually means you're creating tools that support the rest of the design team. So technical designers at a big game studio might make a level editing plugin for the game engine that the team is using. But on a smaller scale, if again, we're focused right now on if you're making your first game, technical design means you come up with your mechanics and your obstacles, and then you implement them yourself. I thought I had another slide in here. So let me pause before I move on to career advice. So just to sort of summarize, there's a lot that goes into making games. If you want to make big games, if you want to make AAA games, you'll work with many, many people, and you'll have a very specialized role. But probably starting out, you will work on smaller projects. You'll probably work on your own or with one or two other people, and you'll do a variety of things. And you'll basically come up with your own game idea and make your own game. But in the process of doing that, you can develop the skills that would then help you go and work for a big AAA company. Although you might find from working on smaller projects on your own, you might actually find that that's the kind of game development you love doing. That is, I will say for myself, having done both, I actually much prefer the smaller 2 or 3 person team environment over the big 100-person team. Mainly because you can really see your own work in the product. I look at Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered and I don't see anything that I did. I know that I worked on that team for 8 months, 40 hours a week, but I look at that game and I don't see my work. Whereas one of the games that my studio has made, I see my work all over it. So I wanted to just end with a little bit of advice. If you want to try to become a game developer, what direction could you go with your education and your career? And I've heard that ACC has some great games classes. So obviously you can take college classes to learn game development, but you can also take college classes that are not specific to game development. I would say any computer science class will be really helpful. Learning programming is very helpful for game development. And then also art and animation. Those classes are also really useful, even if it's not directly applying that to games. Those are some of the supporting skills that are really critical to making a game fun and interactive and juicy to experience. And then apart from taking classes and pursuing a degree related to games, you can also just start making things. You don't have to go to school to make games. You don't have to take a class on how to make games. Anyone can make games. For many, many years, there were no classes on how to make games. People taught themselves, or they came from like software development, or they came from 2D animation or 3D animation. And so people came from a lot of different areas, but back before there were any game development classes that you could take. And most of them just started making stuff. They started making stuff and they got really passionate about what they were making. And then they turned that into their career. Learn any programming language you can. I will really emphasize that I think learning to program is one of the most valuable things if you want to become a game developer, even if you don't want to be a game programmer, because so much of the creation of games relies on programming. Just having those skills makes you a really valuable team member. It's also really valuable to try collaborating with others. I recommend doing game jams. I have a link here. Can I copy this link into the chat? Let's see how my copy paste skills are. There we go. So this is a game jam that's coming up this summer that my partner is actually running. It's called Greenlight Jam. And it is actually, normally game jams take 48 hours. This one is unique in that it is over several weeks. And so I think this will be a really interesting experience, but game jams are a great way to collaborate with others and to find other people to work with. You also, I heard y'all mention at the beginning that you're going to have a hackathon. That is also a great way to collaborate with people and develop more technical skills. So that's awesome that you all are doing that. I hope it goes really well for you all. And then you can also use YouTube tutorials. Oops, I did not come here just to promote my YouTube series, but I do have a YouTube series that teaches people how to make games. Let's see, I'm gonna try and copy this whole thing into the chat. So I've selected a few that I think might be most interesting for getting started, but I actually have like hundreds. So there's a few of my tutorials. This is my whole list. I've been making YouTube tutorials for like 6 years now. So I anything that I know how to do, I have tried to make a tutorial about it, so you can like basically learn anything that I know how to do. But don't just use mine. There are a lot of great ones out there. And YouTube tutorials are still an extremely popular way for people to learn game development. I would say YouTube tutorials remain actually more popular than taking game design classes personally, even though I teach game design classes, so I probably shouldn't say that. But I really do think that tutorials are really accessible to people. You don't have to go to a specific college or be on campus. Obviously, like I teach at the University of Texas, but you don't have to come take my classes at the University of Texas. You can learn the stuff that I teach from my YouTube channel. Don't tell them I said that. But yeah, so YouTube is a great way to learn stuff. So I will now open it up to questions. I also have my email address on here if anyone wants to contact me, my Twitter handle, which I don't use, but I'll go ahead and drop those in the chat as well. And I will now answer questions. There's my contact info.
Wow, that was so much. I felt like I learned so much in such a short period of time.
I am glad. I know that some folks asked questions in the chat. If you want to re-ask them out loud, I would be happy to answer them. I don't know if I'll find them by scrolling. Oh, I do see one that is, when you start a game development project, do you prioritize learning something new or technology, or do you prioritize creating something commercial or widely appealing? That's a really great question. Me personally, I usually prioritize learning something new. One of the interesting things about being a teacher is a lot of times I'm asked to teach things that I actually don't know very well. So like I just learned Kotlin over winter break because they asked me to teach a mobile computing class, and they asked me to not do games. They said specifically, can you do app development and not games? And I was like, well, I guess I can't use Unity. So I learned Kotlin over winter break. And yeah, I started making a couple of little projects just to get some practice with it. So a lot of times, yeah, when I'm making a new project, I'm thinking about what is something that I can learn from this. I have done some more with commercial intents. Before I started teaching, I used to do contract work where like freelance game development. So like someone would say, I want to make this thing. Now you know how to make it, so you do it and I'll pay you. And so I would get money and then I would make it. So that was purely for commercial purposes. Although I usually learned a lot from those things too. Oh, somebody's favorite language is Kotlin. That's awesome. Let's see, why didn't you enjoy working on Mafia 3? Oh, that's a hard question. So I really did not like the game itself, and also the work that my team. So the company I worked for was Certain Affinity, and so Certain Affinity is an outsourced team, and what that means is we were not part of the creative team. We were not part of the team that like it was their project, it was their idea. They essentially hired us to help them do the extra work so that they could meet their deadline to ship. And so they were crunching a lot. We actually didn't crunch, but they were crunching a lot. They were stressed all the time, and they were like annoyed that we weren't doing more, but like they weren't telling us what they wanted to do. It was like really messy and confusing, but it was a stressful time because the game was already late for like going to miss its ship date. And so that's why they hired us. And the work that they asked us to do was also not very interesting in general. So a combination of I didn't like the game, didn't like the work we were asked to do, and it was really stressful. Cool. Any other questions?
Let's see. I guess in terms of creating a game, being the computer science club, a good portion of us are all experienced in coding. But at least seen with the amount of hot potatoing we did when designing our logo, a lot of us are not that great artists. And God forbid we can't exactly pay anybody to make art for us. So at least when it comes to prototyping the game, do you recommend that we just forget all about visuals and just focus on making like the code of something? Like we just have like a cylinder that's our character and just moving around.
I do not recommend that. Here's what I will recommend, and I'm going to drop y'all a link in the chat. Here's the first link, but let me make it better. They updated their website. So this is the Unity Asset Store, and if I can figure out, they've totally changed their UI. If I can figure out where the settings are, you can sort by free, and then it will just show you free assets. Wow, they've really, really done a number on this.
I'm actually glad that you mentioned that because I have another question once you're done there, but go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll give up on trying to customize my share link. It used to be you could set settings and then share a link, and it would share your settings on the store page. It does not look like they do that anymore. But I'm sure you can all figure out how to find the free section. There's a free section in there somewhere. Oh yeah, that probably works. So yeah, find the free section, find some free assets. There's tons of free art assets out there. And then what I actually recommend doing is try to customize them to what you want to make. So rather than making art yourself, you don't have to make art yourself. That's actually not a requirement anymore to make games, to make art yourself. But being able to edit art assets is actually a really, really valuable thing to be able to do. So get yourself a free or cheap 3D or 2D art tool. Blender, I think, is still free for 2D. I've heard GIMP, although I didn't like GIMP when I used it. But there are some free or really inexpensive 2D and 3D art tools. And like just get some free assets and modify them. The free assets on the Unity Asset Store, the license that they're under is that you can edit and reuse them. You cannot resell them, but you can edit them and then put them in your game. And so that's what I recommend.
Doesn't that count under commercial use though? If you decide to sell the game, doesn't that technically count?
Not if you're not selling the art assets by themselves.
Okay.
The specific license for the Unity Asset Store, it is a form of commercial use, but the way the Unity Asset Store assets work is if you release your assets for free through the Unity Asset Store, you agree that other people can download them, modify them, and then use them in their games. So. If you get it from the Unity Asset Store, that is okay. If you get it from somewhere else, that may not be okay. So that's why I recommend the Unity Asset Store. And by the way, you don't have to use these things in a game made with Unity. You can actually get stuff from the Unity Asset Store and then import it into a different game engine.
So you can put it into like Unreal or something?
Yep, for sure.
Yeah.
Although Unreal also has a marketplace that also has free assets, but yes.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, do you think Unreal also has the same policies? Because I'm trying to use
Probably,
the
I think
assets as
so.
well. Yeah, okay, cool.
It seems likely. They're constantly like trying to match whatever Unity is doing. So if Unity is doing something good, Unreal is trying to follow.
Right.
How
I
much
see another
modification?
I mean, I think you can. How much modification should you do, or how much are you allowed to do?
How much should we do? What is counted as like a unique product in this case? Do we just change like
I mean, you can use them as they are if it fits what you're trying to make. The thing is, when you use free assets, it probably is not what you wanted to make. So, like, if you have an idea, you're like, oh, I want to make this dungeon that has these spike traps that come out of the wall. And you go on the Unity Asset Store and you look for free spike traps. And you find some and you're like, well, this was not what I was thinking about, but it's close. So you download it, you import it into Blender, and then you change the color, you change the texture, you change the size of the spikes, and then you put it back into Unity or Unreal or whatever you're using. But maybe it'll be exactly what you're looking for, in which case don't change it at all. There are actually a few there are a few popular games that are made just with free Unity assets that have no modifications. So totally legit. I did see another question in the chat. Let me try and read it. How did you find these various opportunities? Did you seek out specific companies or areas of industry, or did you have contacts who recruited you? So I will share the most interesting example because every experience I've had was a totally different way I got there. But I will share, I think, the most useful for students to hear. When I got the job working at Virtuix, the 360-degree treadmill with the VR headset, the way I got that job was I had just graduated with my master's degree and I was looking for work. And I was just searching online for any companies that were making any interesting immersive experiences, because that was kind of what I wanted to do, was immersive experiences. And so I was just searching for different companies, and you can do through job search websites like Indeed and stuff like that. But I was actually just looking at company websites, and I found Virtuix, and I was like, this looks like a really cool company and a really cool product. They had actually just been on Shark Tank, so I had seen their product there. And so I found their company website. They were not hiring. They did not have a application of any kind, but they had the CEO's email address. And I sent an email to the CEO, and I basically like told him like, this is what I think is super cool about your product. This is why I think it's going to be successful, and this is how I think I can help you. And I explained like, I have just come out of this program where I learned about experience design and creating immersive experiences that are compelling for users, and I want to help you do that with the Virtuix Omni. I want to help you take what is a piece of hardware and turn it into an experience. And the CEO of the company replied to me and invited me to fly down and interview with the company. So don't be afraid to email the CEO of the company directly, but tell them exactly what you think their company is doing that you like, and why you would be a good fit for their company. Those are the two things that they want to know. Don't tell them how badly you want a job. Don't spend an entire email like talking about like how amazing the stuff is that they work on. Focus on why is it a great product, and why is it that you can help them to get to the next step. Cool. Any other questions?
That's awesome. I actually downloaded the Slapdash phones. Oh, but yeah, that's pretty cool. I was gonna ask. I'm gonna play this with my siblings when we're on a flight tomorrow. But
It's a
yeah,
passive play, so it's great for like you hand the phone back and forth.
yeah,
It's great for
yeah,
flights.
yeah. We'll definitely play it. But yeah, I was gonna ask you, do you use Unity for all your app development then? Like other than Kotlin
the-
for like?
For my studio, yes, my studio uses Unity for everything. But now that I've learned Kotlin for this class that I'm teaching right now, over the summer, I'm actually planning on working on a project that's just Kotlin. I'll work in the Android studio with Kotlin. But I am
Will
planning
that
on
be like?
making a. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, my bad. Are you gonna use like Compose then? Like within Kotlin?
Jetpack Compose.
Yeah. Or some, is
Um,
there some other library?
I have not decided yet what I'm going to make, and so I think it will depend on what I make.
Hmm.
But from the stuff that is useful for what I teach in my app development class, mainly is like focused on like buttons and screens. And so I'm actually thinking about not making like a traditional game, like not with like a character controller, but more like um, maybe like a quiz game, or like we have multiple choice, or like a matching game, like a memory game maybe, but like something where like it's buttons on the screen
Oh,
and then different screens that you move between. Because I going back to the earlier question of like what do I choose to make my products for, I would not be releasing this to make money. I'd be releasing it to keep developing the skills that I'm using for teaching this class.
right. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I've messed around with the Unity a bit, like just with I use like Photon for like some like multiplayer stuff. But yeah, I struggled. So yeah, I definitely want to get back into it because it was really fun.
Yeah, I've used Photon before. Is pretty cool. What do you think the future of game academia is, and do you see it as a viable career path? I definitely do I see game academia as a viable career path, like teaching game development? I hope it's a viable career path, because that's the one I'm on. I do see that as a viable career path. Yes, I'm going to go with yes on that one. But what is the future of game academia? So game academia, it will admit, is going through kind of a rough patch. I've heard a lot of people like basically like in high school getting ready to graduate, or like being told not to like go to game development programs because a lot of people have had some bad experiences with them. Like especially if it's a program that just focuses on game design or game development, they tend to not have enough well-rounded skills to get jobs right away, which I know is really frustrating for a lot of people. And so I think it's really important to have either strong technical skills or strong art skills to support the like just doing game design. There are so many people that just do game design and just want to do game design, and there are not very many jobs. So having either a technical skill set or an art skill set really helps with that a lot. And I think that one of the problems with game academia is that students are not being sort of forced to have those more structural skills, and they're being allowed to just sort of like weave around in this ambiguous game design space and then not develop the hard skills needed to get the jobs. All right, any other questions? Y'all can feel free to email me other questions later if you want. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Oops, I was going to drop my LinkedIn in the chat and then I deleted it again. I keep closing windows instead of copying links. Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, yeah, we really appreciate you coming to speak. And yeah, if anyone has any more questions, yeah, like just in general, yeah, we really appreciate you coming.
Well, thanks for having me. I had a great time talking to you all, and I hope that hopefully y'all find your space in game development or in more traditional programming and software development, whichever you decide to go with. And good luck. And good luck with your hackathon.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Yeah, we're definitely gonna need it. A lot of logistics and workshop speakers, everything trying to organize. But yeah.
Alright.
Oh yeah. I guess that ends like the formal meeting for today. If anyone wants to just stay and talk, that's fine. But yeah, thanks everyone for coming. And I think next week we'll also have a meeting. But then I think that'll be our last meeting of the semester since finals, and then the hackathon coming up on the 20th. But yeah.
All right. Well, bye, everyone. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.
I should probably stop the recording now.